Hey guys, I completed 8 phases of Vert Code Elite, and in this video I want to talk about the results I achieved and the program itself. I've done an individual review for each of the first 8 phases and learned a little more each time. Here I wanted to step back and look at all the phases together, including the 4 that I didn't do. First of all, my results. Prior to phase 1, I tested my running vert at 65 centimeters, and across the 8 phases that rose to 74 centimeters, so a gain of 9 centimeters or 3.5 inches. That isn't the whole story though, because I gained everything in the first 12 weeks and then didn't manage to improve after that. So the program itself, it's split into 12 4-week phases. You can either get unlimited access for $275 or you can pay $28 a month to unlock one phase at a time. As well as the phases, there's a resources section with some jump technique tips, some foot and ankle conditioning, and some basic nutrition and recovery measures. Even if you pay for unlimited access, the phases still get unlocked 1 month at a time. This is to stop people skipping ahead because the program is designed to be followed in order. If, like me, you choose to do one phase at a time, then once you stop paying, you get notifications saying when you're going to lose access, which for me was after about 2 weeks. There's a lot of detail in the program, and the night before a new session, I would spend about half an hour going through all the tutorial videos to familiarize myself with the new exercises. It took me a while to realize the structure, but basically the gym sessions start with several agility drills, and this is something that I didn't appreciate during my initial reviews. Although it's called Vert Code Elite and I bought it to improve my jumping, it's really helped with my change of direction and quickness, and in general I could see it being very beneficial for young players, improving their all-round athleticism. One other thing that was entirely overlooked by me was how much it might have improved my 1-foot jumping. Many of the exercises are there for 1-foot jumpers, but because I'm best off 2 feet, I rarely bothered to test off 1. Something else I hadn't seen before in other programs was the attention given to foot and ankle conditioning. This comes back to his focus on having no weak links or energy leakage in your jumps. There were also plenty of stretches and some mobility tests to let you know what the minimum expectations are for you. The first 4 phases make this tidy little pyramid on the landing page, starting with phase 1, which is a preparatory phase aimed at building a base. Quite a few exercises here are setting you up for future phases, like an isometric split squat or a glute march. As I said, the whole premise for phase 1 is that you should have no weak links where your energy isn't transferring well to jumping, and it's quite common for people to see gains here, even though it wasn't his initial intention. He said on his podcast that training should follow a structure of isometrics, then eccentrics, then concentrics. And when you step back and you look at all the phases, you can see how that's been implemented. I really like his phase 1 technical jumping day. There are 4 drills aimed at improving your jump mechanics, and then you put it into practice with some approach jumps. My poor technique was a running theme throughout the whole program. It was naivety rather than arrogance, which made me think I could come from a rugby and soccer background, and with no background in jumping at all, and that not be a problem. Looking back, I would say before you go throwing money at programs, you should really refine your technique using some of the free resources online, some of which I've detailed in the description below, and only once you've exhausted those should you then move on to jump programs. It's no exaggeration to say that you could have an easy 3 to 5 inches of improvement if you just focused on refining your technique. So, after building a base in phase 1, you move on to some sprinting and plenty of single leg strength work in phase 2. The core work is also quite extensive, along with the mobility, but that tails off in phases 3 and 4. You're encouraged to include additional mobility work or follow the yoga routine if you feel you need it, as well as programming your own foot conditioning drills from a list that he provides. If I were to follow this program again, I would be more deliberate in my accessory work. He gives you a sheet of foot and conditioning exercises to choose from, and when some of the core exercises weren't working for me, I was slow to substitute in ones from previous phases. I also felt quite run down at points of the training and should have taken advantage of his minimum effective dose advice that he shares for each phase. That's when he sits down and he talks you through each day, and he goes through the exercises that are absolutely key for you to do and which ones you could skip if you're not feeling up for it or you're short on time. I was probably doing too much at times. He includes a deload at the start of each phase where you have 2 days off, and there were times when I couldn't wait for that to come round. Phase 4 was when it all went a bit downhill for me. I pulled my adductor doing bounding in the final week of phase 4, and although I rehabbed it, I felt like I lost all my momentum. After the injury, I was jumping above 70 centimeters most weeks, but never quite managed to reach my previous best. That's something else that gets overlooked in the way that I review jump programs, because I'm tracking my absolute best jump. whereas the real application of jumping will be in basketball or volleyball, where you're having tens if not hundreds of max effort jumps in a game, and it's far better to be able to jump consistently near your best than it is to have one incredible jump and not be able to repeat it. Probably one of the best outcomes of this program is that I felt that you could come along, wake me up at 2 a.m, drag me to a court, give me a brief warm up, and I could still jump at least 70 centimeters, 27.5 inches. After phase 4, it gets a bit fuzzy, and at the time I spent ages in the forums trying to find out what the future phases contain, and when I did, this is what I found. There's no catchy names, just a combination of weights and plyometrics for 8 more phases. After phase 6, the sessions become shorter, but a 4th lower body day is introduced, and around that time you start seeing exercises being repeated. That's not a criticism, it was nice to not spend so much time watching and re-watching exercise tutorials to make sure I was doing everything correctly. I do have a bit of a confession to make, and it's that early on I realised that you could go to someone else's profile and you could see all these sets and reps and exercises, even for phases that you hadn't done yet. Even more than that, if you click on those exercises, it will still take you to the tutorial video. With that in mind, I'm in a position to talk about the 4 phases that I didn't complete. Phase 9 has med ball throws, sprinting and bounding, some rear leg elevated split squat, RDL. Phase 10 is the same, but it finally has depth jumps, which the research says is one of the best exercises for jumping higher. The depth jumps continue into phase 11, where there's clean pulls, quarter squats, and long duration bounding. I'll leave some mystery to phase 12. There are videos with under 100 views, so there aren't too many people who've made it all the way to the end. I stopped at phase 8 because I already knew what the next 4 phases contained, and because I needed to go and work on my jump technique, I chose not to continue with the program. From speaking to hundreds of you about your own jump training, I think a common theme is that everyone's looking for this magic program that makes you jump 40 inches. Vert Code Elite is probably underhyped, especially for how much it would help your all-round game. Yes, there are plenty of exercises you'll have seen before if you followed other jump programs like depth jumps, hurdle jumps, sprinting, bounding, but there's also entirely new ones that feel advanced and backed up by science. He's deliberate in his choice of exercises, and you understand that more if you listen to his podcast, where he shares plenty of helpful tips. Something else I appreciated was his consideration for overall load on the body. So if you're lifting a very heavy weight, the first question he asks is, can the same stimulus be achieved with a lighter weight, perhaps moving it to a single leg lift? If I'm being honest, I have a sports science degree from 2008, and while I try to keep up to date, a lot of the science has moved on since then. There's almost definitely some subtle nuance to the way that he's laid out the program that I don't have the background knowledge to fully appreciate. That being said, I do feel like the program's been written to include every possible exercise with no consideration for available equipment. Although he does offer alternative exercises, you'll quite often find yourself needing multiple resistance bands or a sturdy box, and it kind of feels like the high-spec gym facility where the exercises are demoed is close to what you'd need to do everything properly. I would have liked to see the program written with a little more emphasis on simplicity. It's great that he coaches NBA players, but saying that you need access to a gym is no guarantee that you won't have to adapt certain exercises. As an example, I have a home gym, and for power skips, I took my dumbbells out in the street, but there's plenty of commercial gyms without the floor space to let you do something like that. Overall, there was too much exercise variation. Even the core work felt like it was being changed to showcase how many exercises he knows, rather than what's actually beneficial for you. There is of course Vert Code Bodyweight, where he's limiting himself to exercises that don't require any equipment. You get a free week of that with Vert Code Elite, and it includes some core and mobility work, and a 3-day-a-week lower body session with some light bounding, power skips, technical jumping, and an Achilles drill. When people ask me to recommend a program, I usually direct them to the free ones online, but because of the wealth of information in the resources section, I would say that if you're going to spend any money on a jump program, then phase 1 of Vert Code Elite is the best value for money that I've found. In general, you can split people into 2 groups. They're either cash rich and time poor, or they're time rich and cash poor. If you have money but not a lot of free time, then it makes sense to pay for a program that has everything written out for you. On the other hand, if $28 is a lot of money for you, then you can absolutely find the majority of this content online. You just have to piece it all together yourself. Thanks for watching.